I'm going to start something that's going to sound offensive. But after 5 decades of watching thousands of people build and destroy wealth, I've discovered a mathematical truth so brutal that 97% of people simply refuse to accept it, even when I show the numbers in their faces. The truth is this: you will probably never be rich, not because you lack opportunity, not because the system is unfair, not because you were born in the wrong place, but because your brain is wired to make exactly the financial decisions that guarantee you will remain in the middle class for the rest of your life. And the worst? You think you are making the right choices. Let me show you the math that will destroy everything you believe about building wealth. If you earn $50,000 a year and save 10%, which is what every financial guru recommends, you will accumulate $5,000 annually. In 30 years, assuming a return of 7% per year, which is the historical market average, you will have approximately $500,000. It seems good? Now adjust for inflation of 3% per year, and that $500,000 is worth $210,000 in current purchasing power. You worked for 3 decades, saved religiously, invested prudently, and the result? You can barely retire without relying on Social Security. This is the trap that 97% of people are trapped in, and no one has the courage to talk about it because the entire financial industry profits from their mediocrity. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, subscribe now, because what I'm going to reveal in the next few minutes goes against everything you've heard about money. But it's exactly what separated the 3% who build real wealth from the 97% who spend their entire lives working to pay bills. At Bridgewater, where I managed more than $160 billion through 4 major crises, I developed a model that analyzes the financial behavior of 10,000 families over 40 years. The data reveals something shocking. The difference between who gets rich and who gets poor has nothing to do with how much you earn. It has everything to do with a single metric that you've probably never measured in your life. This metric is called opportunity capitalization rate. And I'm going to explain exactly what that means and why 97% of people score 0 on this metric without even knowing it exists. Here's what I discovered after analyzing wealth-building data from 1950 through 2025. There are exactly 7 moments in the life of an average person where opportunities for multiplying wealth appear. Opportunities where an investment of $10,000 can turn into $100,000 or more in less than 5 years. 7 moments in 70 years of life. The average person identifies 0 such moments. The person who becomes rich identifies and acts on at least 3 of them. Why the difference? Because 97% of people are following a personal finance manual that was written to keep them safe, not to make them rich. Let me give you a concrete example. In 1999, a software engineer named Mike worked at Oracle making $70,000 a year. He saved 10% religiously. He invested in index funds. He had a 6-month emergency fund. He did everything right by the finance books. A co-worker of his, Tom, earned the same amount but lived on the edge, saving just 3%. In May of 2000, after the dot-com crash, Tom took all the money he had, $23,000, and bought Oracle stock at $9.50 a share when everyone was panic selling. Mike stuck to his plan, continued monthly contributions to index funds. 5 years later, in 2005, Tom's shares were worth $240,000. Mike had $78,000. Same company, same salaries, difference of $162,000. Why? Tom understood something that Mike never understood. Wealth is not built through discipline and patience. It is built through concentrating capital in moments of maximum opportunity. And I want to know from you, where are you watching this video from? Leave a comment telling me your city and country, Because this truth about building wealth applies globally, but opportunities appear at different times in each market. And I want to understand who is paying attention to what I'm going to reveal now about the 7 crucial moments that define your financial destiny. The first moment typically happens between the ages of 22 and 28, right after college. This is when you have the first opportunity to allocate between 20 and 40 hours a week to building a skill of extremely high value that the market is willing to pay absurd multipliers. But what do 97% do? They take the first reasonable job, work 40 hours, go home and watch Netflix. The 3% who get rich use those extra 20 to 40 hours to master programming, high-ticket sales, direct marketing, systems design, something where a person can generate 10 to 20 times more value than the average. I've seen this happen dozens of times. A 24-year-old working in consultancy earning $60,000 a year. He could spend his evenings relaxing, but he chooses to spend 3 hours every night for 2 years learning mobile app development. At 26, he launches an app that generates $15,000 a month in passive income. At 28, he sells the app for $1,200,000. 7 years difference between him and colleagues who chose to relax after work. $1,200,000. But here's what really separates the 3%. They understand that between the ages of 22 and 28, their greatest asset isn't money. It's time multiplied by energy, multiplied by brain plasticity. You will never have that combination again. At 40, you will have more money but less energy and less ability to learn quickly. The window is narrow and closes quickly. Ask any wealthy person how they got started, and 83% will mention something that happened between 23 and 29. It's no coincidence. It's the first moment of capitalization. The second moment happens during financial crises, and here the mathematics gets even more brutal. On average, every 10 to 12 years, a crisis occurs where quality assets drop 50 to 80% of their peak value. 2001, 2008, 2020. If you are alive for 60 years of adult life, you will see 5 to 6 of these opportunities. The average person not only doesn't buy during a crisis, they sell. In 2008, when the S&P 500 fell from 1,565 points to 676 points, 91% of individual investors were net sellers. They realized losses in the fund. The 3% who get rich? They were buying aggressively. A client of mine, a dentist who made $200,000 a year, had $300,000 in savings when 2008 rolled around. Between October 2008 and March 2009, he took $200,000 of those $300,000 and bought shares in companies like Apple at $12, Amazon at $51, Goldman Sachs at $53. He kept it for 10 years. In 2019, those $200,000 were worth $3.2 million. Return of 16 times the capital. Meanwhile, their fellow dentists with the same income kept everything in cash or sold out of fear. The difference? $3 million. But here's what people don't understand. It's not luck. It's not perfect timing. It's simply having capital available when everyone else is panicking and having psychology trained to act when your brain is screaming at you to run. At Bridgewater in 2008, we didn't try to predict the bottom. We simply created a list of 20 quality assets that were being sold for liquidity reasons, not fundamental reasons, and systematically bought them when they reached certain levels of devaluation. Companies that generated billions in cash flow being sold as if they were going to fail. This happens every decade, and every decade, 97% miss the opportunity. The third moment is the most subtle and the most wasted. Career advancement opportunities between the ages of 30 and 38. This is when you've proven yourself, but still have the energy to make aggressive moves. The mistake that 97% make? They stay in their cushy job expecting incremental promotions of 5 to 10% per year. The 3% understand that between 30 and 38, there is a window to make aggressive side moves that double or triple income. Let me give you a real example. I met a product manager at a technology company in 2015, making $120,000 a year. He was 32 years old. He was comfortable. He had equity in the company. A headhunter approached him for a position at a B-stage startup that would pay $85,000 base salary but offer 1% equity. He declined because it felt like a step backwards. 3 years later, this startup had an IPO valued at $2.4 billion. That 1% was worth $24 million. He was still at the original company, making $150,000. The difference? $23.8 million. This happens constantly. People optimize for short-term comfort and lose multiplies chins in the medium term. Between the ages of 30 and 38, you should be making at least 3 aggressive career moves. Each should have the potential to double their income trajectory. If you've been at the same company for 5 years between 30 and 38, you've probably already missed the window. The fourth moment that separates rich from poor is the first real opportunity for calculated risk with equity, typically between 35 and 45 years. That's when you've finally accumulated between $50,000 and $200,000 and an opportunity appears to invest in something non-traditional. A business, commercial real estate, startup investment, franchise. Here the mathematics is crystal clear. If you take $100,000 and invest it in an index fund, in 20 years, you will have approximately $400,000, assuming 7% annual return. If you take the same $100,000 and invest it in a small business that returns 20% a year, in 20 years, you will have $3.8 million. Difference? $3.4 million. But 97% never make that move, because they have been conditioned to believe that investing in index funds is safe and investing in businesses is risky. The reality? The risk is in ignorance, not in assets. In 1993, I met a corporate lawyer making $180,000 a year. A client of his was opening a chain of gyms and offered 20% membership for $100,000. The lawyer refused because it seemed risky. 15 years later, this chain had 62 units generating $13 million in annual EBITDA. The 20% was worth at least $15 million. The lawyer continued working in corporate law, becoming a partner, earning $500,000 a year. Over 15 years it accumulated around $4 million. Difference? $11 million. And here's the part that no one tells you. The gym owner wasn't smarter than the lawyer. He didn't have an MBA. He wasn't a business genius. He simply understood a fundamental truth. 8-figure wealth was never built through salaries, always through ownership. You can make $500,000 a year and be in the upper class. To reach $20 million, you need to own something that grows. The fifth critical moment happens during speculative bubbles. And here the majority make the opposite mistake. During crises, they are afraid to buy. During bubbles, they buy at the top. I saw this happen 3 times. .com bubble in 1999, real estate bubble in 2006, and cryptocurrency bubble in 2021. The math of the bubble is simple. When assets rise 100% in 12 months without corresponding fundamental improvement, you are in a bubble. The correct movement of the 3% who get rich? They sell aggressively when everyone is buying. In 2021, a businessman I know had invested $50,000 in Bitcoin and Ethereum in 2019. In November 2021, the portfolio was worth $1.3 million. Everyone around was buying more, talking about $10 million per Bitcoin. He sold 80%. made $1 million in profit. People called him pessimistic, weak. In 2022, that 1.3 million would have become 300,000. He not only preserved the million, but used 500,000 to buy commercial real estate in 2023 during the mortgage crisis. In 2025, those properties were worth 1.1 million. Total profit for the cycle. 1.6 million starting from 50,000. The friends who called him a pessimist? Most are still trying to recover what they lost. The brutal lesson: wealth is built by panic buying and greed selling. But 97% do the opposite because they follow the herd. The sixth moment happens through the construction of passive income systems between 40 and 55 years. Here, the difference between rich and poor becomes exponential. The average person at age 50 still trades time for money. The rich person has built between 3 and 5 sources of income that function without his physical presence. And I'm not talking about stock dividends. I'm talking about automated businesses, rental properties, royalties, licensing, equity in operating companies. The math is devastating. Person A at age 50 earns $200,000 a year working 60 hours a week. Person B at 50 years old has 3 businesses generating $120,000 each, works 15 hours a week. Same annual income, $360,000. But what happens in the next 15 years? Person A continues working 60 hours and maybe reaches $250,000 at 65. Person B reinvests profits, adds 2 new businesses. At 65, he is generating $800,000 a year, working 10 hours a week. Person A's wealth accumulation in 15 years, $3.7 million. Person B, $9.8 million. Difference, $6.1 million. But more important than the number is the quality of life. Person A sacrificed health, family, freedom. Person B built an empire while traveling and spending time with grandchildren. I've seen this happen hundreds of times. The mistake that 97% make is thinking that they will work until 65 and then retire. The 3% understand that the goal is to build assets that work for you until you have the option to stop whenever you want, not when your body can't take it anymore. The seventh and final moment is the most neglected. Intergenerational transfer of wealth between 55 and death. 97% of rich families lose wealth by the 3rd generation. Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Why? Because rich parents don't teach their children the principles that generated their wealth. They just hand over the money. I saw it destroy families. An entrepreneur who built a manufacturing company worth $40 million. 3 children. He dies at 72, divides equally. $13.3 million each. None of the 3 had to build anything in life. They grew up comfortable. 15 years later, one lost everything in bad investments. Another spent half on lifestyle, and the rest is in litigation with ex-wives. The 3rd maintained, but did not grow. Between the 3 of them, 17 million of the original 40 remain. If they had just invested conservatively, they would be sitting on 80 million. They destroyed 63 million in 15 years. Compare it with a family I know where the patriarch, also a businessman with a similar fortune, had a different structure. He placed 80% in an irrevocable trust that distributes only the proceeds. 20% gave it to their children, but conditioned on them building their own business first and reaching a net worth of $1 million through their own efforts. Of the 3 children, 2 built successful businesses, 1 failed but learned and is on his 2nd. The family today, 20 years later, is worth $160 million. $8 million came from the growth of the original trust. $152 million came from the companies the children built. They multiplied family wealth by 4. Difference between the two families? Structure of transfer of wealth and values, not initial amount of money. Now, let me confront you with something you don't want to hear, but need. You've probably just read about 7 critical capitalization moments and are thinking one of the following things. First objection. But I didn't have those opportunities. I was born into a poor family. I didn't have initial capital. I know exactly what you're thinking, and I'm going to show you why this excuse is mathematically false. Tom, the engineer who bought Oracle in the crash, didn't come from a rich family. He grew up in a lower middle-class home in Detroit. The difference between him and Mike wasn't initial capital. It was willingness to concentrate when the opportunity presented itself. Mike had more money saved than Tom. Tom simply chose to use everything he had at the right time, while Mike kept safe diversification. The dentist who turned $200,000 into $3.2 million into 2008, he took 2/3 of everything he had and gambled when everyone was scared. You don't need $1 million to start. You need the courage to concentrate what little you have when the math is in your favor. Second objection. But this is risky. I could lose everything. Yes, it's risky. You know what else is risky? Work for 40 years following the safe plan and discover at 65 that you don't have enough to retire with dignity. Spending 80% of your waking hours for 5 decades doing something you don't love, and in the end having just enough to survive, not live. That's risk. The 3% understand that there is risk in everything. The question is choosing which risk you want to take. Risk of taking action and potentially failing but learning and trying again? Or risk of not taking action and ensuring mediocrity? Historical data shows that among people who have tried and failed in their own businesses, 63% try again, and 41% succeed the second or third time. Cumulative success rate, 25.8%. Among people who never try, 0% chance of building a successful business. 0. Mathematically, trying and possibly failing is less risky than not trying. Third objection, and this is the most dangerous. I'll do it later, when I have more stability, when the children are older, when I pay off the house, when I have more security. Let me show you the math after. If you're 30 years old and put off starting a business until you're 40 because you want more security, you've missed the decade of greatest energy and least responsibility. The difference? A business started in your 30s has 10 years to fail and start over before you reach 40. Started at 40? You have a try. If you fail at 43, starting over is 10 times more difficult than starting over at 33. The window closes, and with each passing year, your opportunity cost increases exponentially. I saw hundreds of people waiting for the perfect moment. Do you know when the perfect moment arrives? Never. 55 years old, children raised, house paid for. Now what? You are too old for most high-growth opportunities. Venture capitalists stop investing in founders over 55. Startups stop hiring above 50. Banks give less credit to start businesses. The doors close. And what's worse, you've conditioned your brain for safety for 25 years. Now it's nearly impossible to take significant risk. I saw this happen so many times that it became a pattern. The person waits until they feel safe, and when they finally do, they can no longer act because they have programmed their brain to avoid discomfort. That's why the window is between 22 and 45. After that, you're not building wealth. You're preserving what you've built, which for 97% of people is little. Now, the truth that no one wants to hear, but that will define the rest of your financial life. Wealth is not democratic, never has been, never will be. It's not about justice. It's not about meritocracy. It's not about working hard. It's about making specific decisions at specific times that 97% of people don't have the stomach to make. It's about buying when your neighbor is panic selling. It's about leaving a stable job to try something uncertain. It's about putting 60% of your wealth into one opportunity when everyone says diversify. It's about selling on top of euphoria when everyone calls you a pessimist. It's about building for 15 years while friends are enjoying weekends. These decisions are not glamorous, they are not comfortable, and they are definitely not safe. But they are the only ones that separate real wealth from average comfort. And here's the most brutal part. You already know this. You are reading this and recognize that it is true. But 97% of the people reading this aren't going to do anything different tomorrow. They will continue in the same job, same routine, same safe decisions. 10 years from now, they will look back and realize that they understood but didn't act. And then it will be late. Not too late. Never too late. But it will be significantly more difficult and with a lower probability of transformative success. So here's my direct question to you. Do you want to be right or do you want to get rich? Because you can't have both. Being right means following what is accepted, prudent, approved by the majority. Getting rich means doing what is mathematically correct, but socially counterintuitive. I saw people choose to be right for 50 years and end up poor but validated by their peers. I've seen people choose to get rich and be called crazy, irresponsible, lucky, but end up with real financial freedom. You choose, but choose knowing the math. If this content confronted you with truths about financial decisions that you have been avoiding, leave a like now, because this helps the algorithm take this message to more people who need to hear what no one has the courage to say about real wealth building. And if you're not already subscribed, sign up and hit the bell, because in the next videos, I'm going to break down each of these 7 capitalization moments into practical, actionable details that could be the difference between you spending the next 20 years building real wealth or spending the next 20 years working hard to stay exactly where you are. I spent 45 years studying why some people get rich and most don't. I have managed more than $160 billion through the worst crises and best opportunities of the last 5 decades. I saw fortunes being made and destroyed. And the most important conclusion I reached? Wealth is the result of specific decisions at specific times, not generic work over time. 97% work hard their entire lives and end up with little. 3% make uncomfortable decisions at crucial moments and build generations of abundance. The difference is not in IQ, it is not in background, it is not in luck. It's in the courage to act when mathematics screams yes, but fear screams no. And this courage, this willingness to concentrate when others diversify, to buy when others sell, to build when others relax, taking risks when others seek security, is what separates you from a life of financial freedom or a life of average comfort followed by anxiety in retirement. The 7 moments will appear in your life. They have already appeared to their parents. They have appeared to their grandparents. They will appear to their children. The only relevant question is, when they appear to you, will you have the mental structure and courage to recognize them and act? Or will you rationalize why it's too risky, too early, too late, too uncertain, and let it go? Because I guarantee one thing. 30 years from now, you won't regret the calculated risks you took that didn't work out. You will regret the opportunities you saw clearly but didn't have the courage to take advantage of. This is the regret that has no return.